Welcome to the Ridgemont podcast. I'm John Waddis, Managing Director of Ridgemont, a specialist construction and real estate law firm. And I'm sitting here with Justin Sullivan, Chief Exec of Adair, a well-known firm of chartered surveyors and construction consultants, and Senior Vice President of the RICS and member of their International Governing Council. Hi, Justin.
Hi there, John. How are you doing?
Good, thank you. Welcome to the Ridgemont podcast. We're going to start today by talking about your career and how you set up Adair and its tremendous success. Let's go way back in time. So you went to Emmanuel School in Battersea. So you were a Londoner born and bred?
So I was really lucky. So I don't come from a wealthy background. In fact, a not wealthy background at all. And when I was 11 in a comprehensive middle school, my amazing mother put me forward for a government-assisted place, and I got into Emmanuel. So Emmanuel's a private school in Battersea. Lived in Cheam in Surrey, so it's quite a journey to get there at the age of 11, carrying a trombone, house rugby kit, and all the school books. And I've never been a particularly large person or tall person. So yeah, Emmanuel, amazing school, not a big school.
Were you academic?
Reasonably. I was top set for most stuff, but then also a bit of a monkey as well. So could try harder throughout my school career. But I did okay. I could have done a lot better. But the school had an ethos of really good parochial care. So there wasn't any bullying at the school. It was a small school, small class sizes, and great people. School reunion. I was in Hong Kong last week, and I met up with two mates from school.
Wow.
So I've known them since I was 11 years old, and we just catch up every now and then. When I was in Singapore, I met up with a mate there, Tim, as well, who's done really well. He's head of time for APAC. And there's other school reunions that happen through the year where a group of about 30 of us get together and just talk about life and talk about school. And it was an amazing privilege to go to a school like that, and it really did put me on a good foot for when I started my career.
And when you're 17, 18, cast your mind back, what made you decide to do quantity surveying at uni?
Well, I went to a school, Emmanuel School. I was surrounded by very wealthy people, very wealthy kids. There were a lot of amazing school trips they went on. I didn't get to go on those. And it came to 18, actually. And the UCAS forms, I hadn't filled them out. And the headmaster called me in and said, you haven't filled your forms out, Justin. Sullivan, you would have called me. What's going on? And I said, well, I don't think I want to go to university. I don't like the thought of another 3 years of not having any money, having to work in a bar and support my education and coming out with some debt. So I'm really looking at other options. I want to go and work. I want to earn money, and I need to earn money, basically, because I had to support myself. So he said, well, look, we've got a scheme with a firm called Wimpy Construction, and they didn't make burgers. They were a very large company then. They're not around now. They've morphed into Taylor Wimpy. So I went for an interview in Hammersmith Grove for a trainee quantity surveyor, and Ken Groves, the QS Group head, said, do you know what a quantity surveyor is? And we didn't have the internet then. Actually, the guy who invented the internet came from Emmanuel. That's what the school says. And so I said I didn't know what a quantity surveyor did. And he told me, and he said, it's numbers. And I've always been a numbers guy. You're in the office and you're out on site as well. So I thought, hey, let's go for it. So that's what I did. I started at Wimpy. I went to Croydon College, 1 full day a week and then 2 evenings. So one of the evenings was tagged onto the day. So it was quite a long day.
Yeah.
And then worked full time. And I did that for 2 years. And then it's actually my college lecturer. I'm not sure about the ethics around that, who offered me a job.
Yeah.
And I took the job with Nigel Ray and Partners, which is Nigel Ray and Partners, a small practice in Gypsy Hill near Crystal Palace, south West London.
What made you want to move at that stage?
Well, I felt so Wimpy was very corporate, and I was doing measurement. I was doing bills of quantities, and I really felt I could do more. because it was quite a discrete part of the sector. The jobs are amazing. I worked on Hong Kong Airport, ironically, the airport I flew out of the other day. Stuff all over the world. But I just doing bills of quantities and measurement, and at that part of your career, you wouldn't do anything broader than that. And looking at the progression, it looked to me it would be years before I would be doing something more than measurement. And I was offered by Bob Wheeler a traineeship at his practice where you did measurement, but you did valuations, you were out on site. Wimpy, I didn't go on site. I was stuck in Hammersmith Grove. And so it was a much broader experience of construction. Also, to become chartered, which was my goal, I wouldn't have been able to do that at Wimpy. If you're just doing measurement, that wouldn't be enough to tick all the boxes to get your APC. So I went to work at Nigel Ryan Partners, had a great time there, great people, met people there who I have still close friendships with, and ended up knowing their children, employed a couple of their children as well. And then recession struck and I was made redundant from there. I remember driving home. I was driving a Golf GTI, which was a yuppies car then. And they were playing Bridge Over Troubled Water on the radio. I was 21.
Which year was this?
So that would have been 91.
Mm-hmm.
So I was 21 and I was crying my eyes out thinking, it felt so wrong because I was a trainee and I thought my fee earning was such that I would be the least risk to them. But they took the decision and I was very upset about it, and I did give them some feedback about how I felt. But I did make a decision on that car journey that I would never be in a position where other people's behaviour and actions would have a severe impact on me, because I felt I'd done everything. I'd worked my socks off. I'd worked weekends.
And where does that come from, though? Because most 21-year-olds would probably get made redundant and then go back and live with mum and dad and find another job. So what made you feel like that, do you think?
I think it's my upbringing. So I had 3 paper rounds. You know, I had a car washing round. I did a lot when I was growing up from a very, very young age. Like from the age of 6 or 7, I was generating revenue because that I had to. I felt, and so I just felt. I felt that I'd been wronged by that, and I didn't want to be in a position like that again. I really wanted to have more control of my destiny. So I went back to Wimpy with my tail between my legs, back to Ken Groves, and he said, I'll employ you again in a heartbeat, Justin, which he did. So he employed me. I finished off my degree. I ended up on a job in Gloucester on a civils job. It was the A417 Brockworth bypass.
Glamorous.
Very glamorous. I had a Vauxhall Nova, which was really nice. I had a yellow light on the roof, and a motorway maintenance badge on the back. And I lived in Diggs up in Gloucester for a couple of years. I did that, and I really didn't get on with my line manager, who was a surveyor as well, who, looking back, he had some mental health problems.
Right.
The culture then, and it was not just on that site, but it was in our sector, it was a lot around alcohol. So it was, you would finish work, you'd start work quite early, so you were on site at 7:30, and then you'd get through to finishing work at 6, and every night in the pub. Every night in the pub. Not at lunchtime.
Yeah.
So I did see a lot of that not on the site work, but yeah, in the pub every night until late, 10 closing, and then up, full English breakfast in the B&B, and then to work. And I did that for a while.
Not a very healthy lifestyle. And could you see that in people?
Well, it did, because my boss, and this took him complete surprise when I fed it back to him. I got into work at 7:30, and I'll be working, feeling a bit rough, because I drank a lot of alcohol the day before. He would get in later than that, and you couldn't have a decent conversation with the man until lunchtime at 1 o'clock, when he sobered up, basically.
Yeah.
And I got really frustrated by that, because I was still learning, yeah? So I was then 24, still very hungry, and wanted to learn, wanted to get my APC. He was very rude to me, and I just couldn't work in that environment. So I I decided to leave. But also I did feel like I felt in that car journey where it happened again, where other people's behaviours and the like are having an effect on my destiny and career. And I didn't know how to deal with it. So I resigned and went to see his boss and said, look, this is what's been happening. You must have been seeing it happen. You're in the office next to us. And I made a decision. And he said, well, I don't want you to leave. I'll get rid of him. I said, well, that's just not going to happen. That's not how the corporate world works. I know that. Yeah, it will be the more junior person who has to either put up with it, or do something else. So you've got an HR issue. Deal with your HR issue. I'm not going to hang around to see how you deal with it. It's been there for years.
Yeah.
So I'm off. They actually stayed there. We went freelance because I wanted to finish off what I was doing, and also I wanted revenue. So I went to see the people I'd worked at Nigel Rand Partners, some of the partners had moved on and set up on their own. I went to see them and said, look, this is where I'm at. And one of them, who's become a very close friend of mine, Derek Cramsey, I mentioned his name, Del Boy, if you're listening, love you loads still. He said to me, don't do this, okay? You're not qualified. You might have your degree, Justin, but you're not RICS. You can't set up a QS practice without being chartered. It's a really bad mistake. Finish off your training and then do it. And I was so petulant, I refused to listen to him.
Mm-hmm.
I said, Derek, I think you know me by now. And we'd maintained a close relationship all through those years. And I am going to do this, okay? I will create work. I will do it. And so I remember where we were, in a pub, hey? I remember a pub as well. And so we were there for a couple of hours and him persuading me with another chap as well. We had a surveying practice. So Justin, you're too young. It's too
and you're 24 at this point.
24. You're too inexperienced and you need to learn more, see more of life. So anyway, I wouldn't listen. And so it came to the end of it and Derek said, okay, I'm not surprised because I know you. He said, okay, if you're going to do it, I'll support you. Here's 4 jobs.
Wow.
So I subbed off him. And I set the firm up. So Wimpy said, don't call yourself Sullivan Associates because that will really confuse payroll. Come up with another name. So my middle name is Adair. So I formed Adair Limited and that was in 1994. So, and it's been...
The rest is history.
The rest is history. The firm has changed a lot over those years.
Well, so I was on your website and I see that some of the clients that you mentioned, these are really great clients, Wellbeck, Michigan de Rea, Park Lane Developments, very well-known names. You could have dreamt as a 24-year-old setting out that you'd be working for these types of clients.
So I absolutely not. I think you're right, John. So my idea was I could see a gap in the market from when I'd worked for Nigel Rand Partners and Wimpy, where subcontractors generally had poor commercial support. So they are lower down the food chain. Getting good quantity surveyors, good commercial managers into their businesses was a challenge for them, and it still is. Okay, the quality of information that we see from that part of the sector, I'm now in dispute sector, as you know, is generally poorer than you'll see from tier 1 contractors or from client side. Was that I could offer my services to that part of the sector, which is what I did. So I had a system, a business model, where the first job I didn't charge for. And then what I would do is I would price all of their work for no charge. And if they won the job, then I'd charge them 3% of the money they received from the contractor, the main contractor. That would have been my fees, 3%.
Wow, and that's an amazing deal for them, right?
It's a great deal. The risk is low, so their tendering cost is zero. I can fly around drawings because I'd done a lot of taking off, a lot of bill production. And also, a lot of the work was for housing developers. So the household names, Barratt, Countryside, and the like. And the subcontractors, they get to know that there was this QS who would do this. And so on one site, when I turned up, I was working for the groundworker, the bricklayer, the dry liner, the carpenter, and the painter. So I would do all of their, on one site visit, I'd arrive, I'd print the day worksheets for them in NCR, So the people on the evenings won't know what that is. It's when we used to handwrite stuff. And you get carbon copies below. I get the site foreman for that trade. Okay, let me go through your diary. I'd pick up variations, new drawing issues. I'd pick up what changes had happened, and I would do their final account as it went. So I'm picking up their extras, which traditionally they don't pick them all up, and it was all evidenced. And then I would agree to final account with the developer, who I became quite unpopular, as you can imagine, with developers, because I was generating more revenue for the trades and probably squeezing their margin. And I ran Adair like that for quite a while, and that was successful, and it grew. And then the developers clocked onto this, and so I started working for the developers.
Yeah.
So, and less for the subcontractors. The subcontractor model is difficult to collect money, even though they've had the money.
Yeah.
There's more insolvency events in that sector than there is as you move up the food chain.
When did you move away from working with subcontractors?
Well, we still work with subcontractors now, but then the business was just subcontractors.
Yeah.
That's a good question. I'd have to think. It's probably after 10 years, something like that.
Okay.
We ended up then working for St George, the Barclay Group, Countryside, Barrett's, back with Wimpy's, which became Ceridian. Luckily, we didn't get knocked by then, but Reddington's, the big developers, commercial and residential, although most of our stuff was residential. In the UK, we were doing cost planning and build production.
And how did you pivot to working for them? Was it more that they approached you because you had a growing reputation, or did you directly target them?
So I think it was a mixture of both. So some was old contacts from the Wimpy Supernova, someone called it, and they'd moved on. And it was like, oh, here Justin's in business. So how about looking at a cost plan for this? And as Adair grew, back then we probably had 6 or 7 surveyors, and we had surveyors in their offices on secondment, so doing cost planning, valuations, variations. And those surveyors, they don't work at Adair anymore, but I still have a connection, a friendship with them.
Yeah.
And a lot of surveyors end up working overseas, and I'll pop in and see them.
So Adair grew, and you've had tremendous success. You've now got offices in London, Surrey, Birmingham, and Gibraltar. But you've also had personal growth in that time as well. You've spoken about how you come from a normal background. You're the normal one, but you've risen to become the chair of the Construction Industry Council up to July just gone, the senior vice president of the RICS and member of their International Governing Council, and a member of the board of the Considerate Constructors Scheme. How did you do that?
So there's a good story to this, John. And you missed out Buckinghamshire New University. So I sit on their board. BNU would be upset. Nick, if you're listening, I need to update the website. I don't think you're on there. So, and Maggie. So what happened was I became chartered, and we moved the business from Cheam, where I live, to Epsom, not our first or second proper office. We moved into the offices, and I wrote to all the local chartered surveyors, not the estate agents, but the building surveyors, QSs, PMs, saying, look, Adair has moved to Epsom, love to meet you. I've always had my competitors very close. I've always had a good relationship with my competition. And one of them, well, a few of them, actually, all of them wrote back, and I had lunch with them. And one of them was a chap called Roy Ilott, who became a great friend. And Roy, we had lunch, and I sat there and I said, look, this is what I think about the RICS, and it's not engaged with its members, and it's not doing a good service, and it's concentrating on global, and a lot of things, and other stuff as well. And Roy, we finished lunch, and Roy said, right, he said, there's a couple of things you need to know about me, because I'd spoken about myself, which is I've learned a lot since then, although I'm speaking about myself now. He said, now Justin, I sit on governing council at RICS, and I also sit on the complaints and disciplinary panel. And I thought, oh dear, I'm in now trouble, because I have been putting the RICS down for the past hour. He said, 80% of what you've said is right. He said 20% is wrong. It's quite dangerous for you repeating hearsay about the professional body. So he said, can I say to you, instead of being on the outside criticising, why don't you get involved and make a change and get that 20% right and give a good message about your.
So when was that you started getting involved?
So this is probably 98, something like that. And so I did.
So what was your initial involvement?
So they then had local associations. So I joined Surrey Local Association, which is a local member group, which sadly got disbanded. There was some various changes and reviews RSS has been through over the decades. And that local member group was actually the second largest group of surveyors in the world, believe it or not.
Wow.
So the biggest being London.
Yeah.
These stats might have changed since then. And the second was Surrey, the stockbroker wealthy part of the UK.
Yeah.
And then it changed around the various regions. So I sat on their committee. I rose up to be vice chair, and then I chaired the committee as well. And then I sat on the South East Regional Board as well. And then I was asked to chair the South East Regional Board. But I was sort of done with the regions because I couldn't see what value has been added to membership from the regions. I think the structure and the policy behind it wasn't right then. I wasn't the only one that thought that. And I wanted a bit more. And I was contacted by a chap called Gary Strong. Actually, I spoke with Gary this afternoon. He's a really good guy. He's a building surveyor, so he can't count, but we'll let him off that. But Gary contacted me. He'd heard about me and said, would you please come and join the professional groups, which is the part, it was called the faculties then. It's the part of RICS that creates the standards.
Yes.
So I joined the professional group. I joined the quantity surveying professional group. I loved that. I really enjoyed that. That went through changes. We had an amazing chair, a chap called David Bucknell, had an OBE. He was the founder of Ryder Levitt Bucknell. It was Bucknell Austin, then Ryder Levitt Bucknell. Became friends with him. He left RLB, became non-exec chair of Adair, and he was chair of that board. David suddenly passed away. Very, very sad, complete surprise. And I became the chair of that board. So I was chair of the QS board for RICS, and I became the chair of the global QS board as well. So with that, you become an ambassador for RICS, not just in the UK, but globally as well. So then I travelled a lot doing that role for RICS. So the remuneration was zero. So
and what motivated you to do it? Because you would have been busy growing Adair at the time.
Yeah, I mean, I think so. Adair's a small firm. It's got bigger, but you get to see corporate life. You get to meet amazing people, and also you're making the world a better place. So I've been very successful in my career, and you're giving something back. I get a lot from that. I remember that conversation with Roy Eilert. So when I've been to, I don't know how many, there was one year, I think it was about 8,000 members I spoke to. I went all over the country doing stay informed events. And some of them were like me then, and they were very critical of RICS, and I wouldn't call them out during the Q&A, but I would at the end of the session say, come on, can we have a chat?
Yeah.
Yeah, because what you're saying, I hear what you're saying, I can hear your frustration, but actually what you're saying isn't right, you're factually incorrect, and I think that's quite dangerous for you to be doing that as a professional. So basically the same as Roy had said. I said, come on, you've got a lot of energy there, you're a bright person, please get involved and try and make RICS better. So I get a lot from it, John, and I still do now. It's more difficult now. I think the higher up you rise through the institution, the more difficult it is, I've got to say, than when you are lower down. But I still enjoy it. I've met amazing people all over the world who are chartered surveyors or who are part of other professional institutions. I chair a coalition as well, the International Cost Management Standards Coalition. I've met amazing people who have become lifelong friends. So I get a lot from it.
So you've risen to the top in respect of your sector personally, and Adair has gone from essentially being you helping out some former colleagues to being a very well-known business. There's two questions. One is why? Why did you do all of that? Because that's a lot of work, it's a lot of stress, a lot of effort needed. Why?
Well, it got to a point with RICS where I was chair of the board, and there was a lot of stuff going on around standards, and we weren't doing standards well. And there was a project called PG 2020, and that basically disbanded the professional groups. And RICS, we were then going to rebuild with not siloed professional groups, but cross-discipline. That rebuild didn't happen. Okay. And then RICS went completely off the rails, and we had the Levitt review and the line. But I was then in a position where if I didn't do it, then who was going to do it? And I really felt that I had to help my institution. And I looked and thought, I'm the chair of the QSs, which is one of the biggest professional groups in RICS. I have all of this history and knowledge. I know so many of the staff. As I've got an amazing relationship with loads of RICS staff from the past. Sadly, a lot have gone through the changes. There's still a large number left. And I really did feel, if I don't do it, who else is going to do it? I'm in a fortunate position that I own Adair, so I don't have to report to anybody about what I do. I had money that allowed me to do it. So I did feel some responsibility in taking up that mantle and doing it. And I've got to say, I was under a reasonable amount of pressure from the exec at RICS. They felt that I was the person to do this. And it was an honour to do it because it's on your CV, being actively involved in the largest professional body on the planet, and eventually one day leading it, which I haven't reached the top yet, John. That's 1st of January 25. I've become president-elect, all things going well, on the 1st of January 24. I really felt there was a responsibility there to do it, and I spoke it through with my amazing wife, and she was there to support me, and I had support of RICS, so they gave me amazing staff to work with, and also a great team at Adair. So Adair, as I say, is of a size where it gets a profile in the market, which is probably greater than the firm would normally from this size, because of the activity that I have through RICS and the Construction Industry Council and the ICMS.
And is that just a tangential effect, though? Actually, it sounded like your real motivation was the good cause, essentially.
That's the real motivation.
Yeah. And then in terms of growing Adair, what's motivated you over the, I mean, we're talking decades here, to keep pushing Adair, keep growing it? Why? Why have you done it? Why did you not want to keep it just yourself? And why did you continuously put the effort in to grow it to the business that it is now?
Well, part of that is I had quite a scary moment back in, when was it, 98, something like that, where two of my biggest clients both said, one shut their office, their regional office, their Leatherhead office, and another said, oh, all the books full. We're not going to be tendering anymore this year.
Wow.
So I was like, oh, wow, that I've just lost 70% of my revenues. And that's really scary. And I had probably then 7 or 8 surveyors sitting there. What do we do now, Justin?
Yeah.
So that's, you learn quite quickly when needs must. So it was actually, I'm too exposed to one area of construction. So I looked at other sectors within construction. So building surveying presented itself as an opportunity. So we've had building surveyors at Adair for decades now. Not just doing working for residential developers, but branching out into other areas as well. We also then started looking at dispute work and expert witness work, which now is nearly a half of our revenue is in the dispute. And so then as that grows and changes, it's good fun, watching the business change. The people I work with, this team is amazing. They're great people. We have a lot of fun. We do a lot of charity stuff. They've just come back. They did a go-karting thing. We go horse racing a lot. They're nice people. They're really good people. We've just hired a head of people and culture to keep that culture as the business grows, because we're growing again. And it's good fun. And why wouldn't you carry on doing something you really enjoy, and you're making money?
Do you see the kid who had 3 paper rounds and a car washing round in you now, in still wanting to push these things, having that kind of innate determination drive that is the big thing? So we've spoken to a few business people in this podcast, and each of them seems to have had some kind of innate drive that they can't explain, which means this is what they do essentially.
Yeah, I'd associate with that. This is what we do. So people ask, how do you do all of that, all of those hats you've got, and run Adair? And the answer to that is, I don't do much else. And you'll never hear me complaining about my job or the people I work with. That's because I enjoy it. I do Adair. I don't play golf. I don't follow football. I do the public benefit stuff because I enjoy doing it. And that's it. So I got a very supportive family. Until a couple of days ago, both my boys were working in this business. Michael started his first day as a training contractor to be a lawyer. You met Ryan earlier. He bought us a drink. So it's what I do, and that drive is there. So if I didn't do this, what else would I do? So I do the public benefit thing, and I do this. I really don't know what else there is. I mean, I do charity work as well, and Adair gives a lot to charity, and it supports grassroots sports. We sponsor rugby teams and football teams over the years, and I get that from that. You meet a lot of different people. I've met some of my heroes. I met Sir David Jason.
Wow.
Mary Berry, Dame Judi Dench. I mean, Jay Blaze. You get to meet, as I said to the King the other day, I hate a name drop. But you do get exposed to another part of life, which is amazing. Unless you did that public benefit thing, that doesn't really happen.
Sort of rounding off this part of the podcast, going back to 24-year-old you when you were starting out, what advice would you give 24-year-old you now?
Okay, so I have given this advice to a 24-year-old other a number of times. I would say, firstly, have a goal. Okay, have it written down and have a goal. Just don't do random, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that. The other one is have some marketing plan and expertise around you. And some of that now you don't have to pay a lot for. There's people that will do it on a pro bono basis to help you. That's really important. You get your marketing right. And the other one is to have a mentor. Okay, so someone, probably not a family member, okay, but someone who's got your best interests at heart and will give you advice and help you. And I've been lucky to have, by accident through the years, a number of amazing mentors. And I still have them. I think all of them are female apart from one. But they do, and I go and I have lunches with them, I see them. If I'm quiet, they phone me. And I didn't even know what was going on, that these people were actually mentors, until later in my life that I realised what actually they were doing. They had my back.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, we're going to now talk about diversity, which is a subject that you're really passionate about.
Sure.
I'm going to read out some facts that I've retrieved from the internet. So if our listeners identify that any of these are wrong, then I stand corrected. But I think they give an impression about where we are in terms of the construction sector. Inclusion of ethnic minorities within the construction sector rose from 13.3% to 13.7% between 2021 and 2022. And that's up from 5.4% in 2009. That sounds like progress.
Yeah, but it's not enough. John, the thinking's wrong. So there's a number of stats, and I'm sure you've got some more. But I think, and this actually this morning, I was with a lawyer, with a law firm you mentioned earlier, and we were talking about diversity. We always seem to end up, when I meet people, having this conversation. And it's not just those stats. There's a stat which probably isn't on your search of the internet, but is actually having the diversity and inclusion and equality in senior positions. That's where the problem is. So if you look at, in particular, if you look at black professionals in our sector, that's a really low number. I think it's 2%. You probably got the stat there. But if you look at black professionals in leadership positions, it's even lower. It's really, really low.
Why is that, do you think?
I think part of it is that it becomes a vicious circle. So if you don't see people in those leadership positions from ethnic minorities, then would you think that you could achieve that? You'd have to be something pretty special if you're going to rise above that and achieve it. So I think it's something we need to change. And I use my platform to do that. And I'm going to quote you, Lawrence. So Lawrence Belafonte from the Construction Industry Council. He was at the time he was an intern. He's moved up since then. He's a great guy. And I was asked to speak at an event which was promoted by BPIC. And I was asking Lawrence, how does he feel about me doing that because I'm not black, yeah? And I'm talking about black people in construction. And he said, and Lawrence is black, and he said, well, actually, I think it's amazing you're using your platform to call it out, okay? Because you're going to get queried, why are you doing it? Because I'm privileged. I'm white, middle-aged male, yeah, who's of a certain income bracket. So I have a privileged position.
Yeah.
But you're using that to try and call it out and make it a better place.
So I've got two questions on that. One is where does this all flow from? Does this go back to when you were the new kid at school where you didn't quite come from the same background as everybody else and there was perhaps some difficulty settling in? And then secondly, do you think that you can use your position within RICS to really do something in this respect?
Okay, so for the first one, I think it's from the school. I think it's from Emmanuel. So Emmanuel School, very successful school. I would say the percentage of Asian and black students was massive compared to other schools. And so I didn't see them as Asian or as black. It's just not how I see people. And I brought up two children who are the same, actually. And I think actually that age group just don't see it.
Yeah.
That Aaron is a black kid. They just see Aaron. And I just don't see it like that. So I've probably been in the past guilty of building a business that didn't have a lot of ethnic minorities, or building a business that should have more. But I haven't, because I don't see it. That's not what I hire.
Yeah.
So one of our surveyors, who's amazing, Leanne Smith, no one hire her. She's amazing. Leanne came for an interview, and we're sitting there. I interviewed her in the Epsom office, and I said, Leanne, can I ask why you've come to us? Because we didn't come to you, and we weren't recruiting this role, but you've come through an agent, and you've come to Adair. Why? And she said, well, I've looked at your website. You've got women in senior positions in your company. So I know that I can progress through and become senior in your business. And it stuns me. I never looked at my website or looked at the gender or the colour of the skin of the people in my business. I never looked at that. So that's one. So it's how I see things. And I've only learned that recently, John.
Yeah.
I'd say I've learned that in the past 3 years. But the other thing that struck me was when the Construction Industry Council, as you mentioned, I chaired it for 2 years. It's a 2-year post. But before that, there's a year run-up where you're the deputy chair. You're learning the ropes. So I did that. And I made myself busy, as I always do. And I went round every panel that they've got. And they've got a lot.
Yeah.
So they've got like 30 different panels around the country and regions. And I tried to go to as many as them as I could, just to learn what the CIC was about, so that when I took up the chair, I knew what I was dealing with and I could lead and I would know the people around me.
Yeah.
So what struck me was, of those 30 panels, 200 people, maybe more, 300, there was one black person.
Wow. I mean, that's incredible, isn't it?
I mean, that is, and they're the leaders of our sector. So I just couldn't believe it. I was just so shocked. And I took it to the board. I took it to the chief exec, Graham Watts, OBE, who's become a good friend. I was speaking with Graham earlier today. As we went through the journey, I had a very close relationship. I always have a close relationship with the exec when I'm in a non-exec leading role. I said, Graham, we've got to do something about this. And Graham said, well, the thing is, CIC is an umbrella body where the professional members, RICS is one of those, the IRIBA, CIOB, RTPI, I know every acronym in our sector now.
Yeah.
They put the people forward for the panels. So it's not the CIC is choosing people to go on these panels and we're discriminating on who we put on there, but we just don't choose these people. We just run the panels. I said, well, I've got a problem because I do not want to take up the chair of a body that has only got one black person. Yeah. And also the Asian as well, very, very few.
Yeah.
And it's completely disproportionate to the stat you've just mentioned there. Hey.
Yeah.
So, Graham, we've got to do something because I will get castigated for it. And it actually, it's not, that's the point. I don't like it. It doesn't feel right to me to lead something like that. The board has amazing equality. So the leaders in professional bodies in the UK, I think it's bigger than 50% are females. So on our board, I think we had 9 board members and 6 were females. So that part of it, great. The equality...
It's a good start, yeah.
It's a good start. And it is because a lot of the chief executives are females in our sector. So we've got to do something. So I came up with an idea to do something about it. And it was that what we have an umbrella body within CIC. And what we do there is there's a number of groups like BPIC, like diversity surveyors, there's Bola and Amos, who are doing amazing things in this sector. And to get them together, because they're competing against each other, and that's not cool.
Yeah.
And that doesn't really help the issue, because then when government looks at us, they see, well, you've got everyone arguing with each other over there. That's not helpful. It's to form an umbrella body that populates itself with a board and has panels. So then CIC, they can then apply for leadership positions at CIC.
Yeah.
Okay. So we did that. We set it up. It was called Diversity in the Built Environment to start with. The mistake we made, first of all, was that we chose one of the groups to lead it. Of course, then the other groups get upset because they're not leading it. So that caused us some problems. But then we got it off and running. Jessica Taylor, who's a lawyer at Ashford's, she's the chair, she's led it. Gal Royston from CBRE is deputy chair, and they're doing stuff. So we've got our first black person as a chair of a panel at CIC, and that's Bola. Well done, Bola. He's the chair of the D&I group at CIC, and we're starting to make a difference. We've been asked, why are you just doing black people? Why? Because there's many other ethnic minorities. And we said, well, we've got to start somewhere. Okay, so we're starting here. It's called Diversitas, which is the Latin name. So it doesn't mention black people in it, but that's where it's starting. And the idea is then we look at other sectors and how we're going to LBGT, we can get other sectors in there, and then populating a really diverse looking CIC, and then take that and take it to other umbrella bodies and other bodies in our sector and say, look, here's the model. Okay, it costs money. It didn't cost a lot of money. Take it. Here's all the governance around it, our election process, how we've done this. So Construction Leadership Council, other bodies, have a look at this.
What's your gut feeling as to why there is this issue?
I think it's bad leadership. I think when I see pictures go up, as I did the other day, of a group of middle-aged white men, 10 of them with high-vis jackets and hard hats on, saying, "Oh, isn't this good? We've just done this." And I think when people look at that, there was one woman in that photo, but they were all white. Yeah, you look at that and you think, would you aspire to be a leader in our sector if you don't see others of your race in a leadership position? I think it's a real problem. I think it's a thinking problem. Another chap, Tiger D'Souza, who was at RICS, he's moved on, amazing guy. And he posted the other day, the other problem you get from this is when a chief exec, a chair, is hiring for their board, for their leadership positions, and they choose someone that is black, you've then got the people who are white middle-aged males who are really upset because they didn't get it because they're a white middle-aged male. We've then got that problem as well, that you're not actually fixing the problem. You're not. It's not a tick box exercise. It's about thinking. It's thinking about how my children think about this, is that we shouldn't be discriminating, and we're still doing that.
I'll give you another fact. 11% of the construction workforce are women, and only 1% of workers on site are women, when women make up 49% of the UK workforce. How do you rationalise that?
It's bad, isn't it? They're really bad. They're really bad statistics. The chartered surveyors, we're doing better. We were 13. We're up to 16 now. I think some of it is around flexible working. So we still have a society where the female, the mother, does a lot of the childcare at early stage rather than the father, and that's still a lot of the way it is. Conversation I was having this morning was about construction solicitors, and the percentage is really high that are female, really high. So it's well over 60% are female. Why is that? I think it's around flexible working. I think it's been able to do a job where you don't have to be on site laying bricks and up wood and the like. I think that's part of it. The rest of it, I still think we've got a very macho industry. I think the well-being in our sector is really bad. The mental health is terrible. Highest suicide rate of any sector. We're running PropNet again next week, and we've got Steve Kerslake speaking, and he's going to talk about well-being in construction and mental health in construction. And it's still something. It's a massive challenge. I mean, what he'll talk about is he will say in the staff canteen or the site canteen, when you go in there, the food they're serving, I mean, is that really healthy food they're serving? And the changing facilities and what's on the wall of the porter cabin, it's pictures of the site. It's not a football game or stick only fools and horses on, Do something that is so they can relax. We're getting all of that wrong. We haven't got standards in those sectors. There's no metrics in there to try and make it better. I mean, how would you feel as a woman applying for a job on site as a painter or something with it all being met? I think you'd be daunted by that.
Yeah, I think so. Going back to something you said about one of your colleagues who, when you interviewed her, she said that one of the reasons why she wanted to join Adair was because you had females in senior positions. 75% of women have been passed over for promotion in the construction sector compared to 25% of men.
Yeah, that stat doesn't surprise me. You see a lot of females at associate level, but getting to the next level, it doesn't happen as often, and that is a real problem. Again, does that come down to the ability to attend evening events, networking events, dinners, stuff at the weekend? Is it more difficult for them to do that than it is for men? Probably. We run our networking events at lunchtime, and you've come to PropNet, John.
Yeah.
We get a lot of females at PropNet and females in leadership positions. And I can only think, and I'm not asked the question, but it is, I think, one, because they know there's going to be a lot of other females there because they've come before and they say, this is amazing, because it's not just men in dark blue suits and I'm wearing a dark blue suit. But I think also it is because it's at lunchtime. So they can come out of the office to an event. There is alcohol there, but it's not the dominant thing. There's a good speaker, it's networking, and it finishes at a reasonable time. It finishes at 2:30, something like that.
So is that something you thought about putting on at that time so that...
It was intentional. Yeah, it was absolutely intentional to get a more diverse group of people together. The other reason we do it at that time is because of the cost. So the venues we go to, we say to them, what's your quietest lunch? It's normally a Wednesday, if they're open, or Monday and Tuesday maybe if they're not. And what we do is we take the whole venue, we get them to move all their tables and chairs out of the way, so they're getting way more revenue than they would on that day. It's networking, so people can't sit down.
Yeah.
So, and that really works. And I think the last one we ran was our 23rd PropNet. So I think maybe more than accident than design, because getting the venue was easier. And then we found we're getting a really diverse bunch turning up.
Oh, for sure. And really good quality people.
They're amazing people. But that's down to Joanna Amis, head of marketing. She vets the lists. She really does.
She's very, very hardworking. That's for sure. To round off talking about diversity, because diversity is not just a construction sector-specific issue. More generally, what do you think business leaders need to do to champion diversity?
I think you need to be aware of it. You really need to think about it. As a leader, you need to think when you're being photographed with people, just have a think about that. How's that going to look? I'm very careful when I'm being photographed that who's around me and how it looks. And I attend events sometimes and I'll say to the event organizer, this is really not good. You have just brought together a group of white middle-aged men. That's not good. That's not good optics for you. And it's not good optics for me because I strongly disagree with this. And it might make me unpopular with the event organizer, but this is really not good. Our leaders should be inspiring those from ethnic minorities to achieve and showing that it can be done and making it easier and more accessible.
Well, Justin, that's all we've got time for today. Thank you for joining us on the podcast. Justin Sullivan is Chief Exec of Adair Chartered Surveyors and Construction Consultants and Senior Vice President of the RICS. If you've enjoyed this podcast, then email us at contact@ridgemont.co and we will add you to our newsletter so you can see when the next podcast is available.